evening, gentlemen. Today I'm going to talk to you about something very close to home, and I'm going to talk about the Kashmir problem. I'll tell you how this problem started. I was having a drink with one of my friends from the Royal Air Force, Squadron Leader Tom. We were together doing the staff course at Wellington, and I barged into him yesterday. We had a good drink in the bar, and then the topic turned to Kashmir. He'd been to Kashmir. It's a wonderful place, he says, a good holiday place for a holiday. It's a pity that it's a disputed area. I told him it's not disputed. Indians don't consider it disputed. It's an integral part of India. But now, when I went through the discussion with him, I come to the conclusion that the problem of Kashmir has been created by India. When I say created, it is an international issue. It features in the list of disputes in the United Nations. And we must not forget the fact that who took the case to the United Nations? Who? It is India. It is Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru who approached the Security Council about the aggression by Pakistan and the tribals in Kashmir. Why he did it? Nobody knows. Maybe he's advised by Lord Mountbatten. And Patton, as you know, was a Tory of the British Raj who'd been put in charge in India as the Governor General after the British had left and gone. So there is the problem. The problem to internationalize Kashmir is something which India did it. And then matters were compounded further when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, in his wisdom, brought in Article 370 of the Constitution. He amended the Constitution, and very cleverly, the resolution for this was moved by Gopal Swami Iyengar, who was at one time the Prime Minister of J&K also, when Nehru was out of India. The idea was to convince the people that I got nothing to do with it. But the fact is, this article has became like a anchor around the throat of the Indian leadership. And India accepted so many things along with the Article 370. Now, when you see this background, we will see what happens. And I have also got a letter which Prime Minister Nehru wrote to Liaquat Ali Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, in which he promised to hold a plebiscite once things become normal in Kashmir. Later he backtracked when he realized that the Valley is going to vote en masse to join Pakistan. Now, if you go these three steps which I've said, who created the Kashmir problem? It is the Indians. Instead of integrating the Valley totally with India, bringing into force all the laws of the Republic to that state, in addition, allowing free migration to the city of Srinagar and other places, so that India could become one. The idea should have been to change the demographic composition of the state, not to keep it as a separate entity forever. It only required Narendra Modi to come and undo this unjust things which had been perpetrated by the previous Congress regimes. But now the problem is, there's an old saying in the English language that once the horses are bolted from the stable, you can't get them back. It's not easy. And that's what has happened. The horses are bolted. Now, India also compounded issues by not becoming a power like China. And the 56 Organization of Islamic States every year condemn India for the occupation in Kashmir. And that's not a small number, 56. Population-wise, yes, they don't matter much, but they are 56 in number, and they are a big voting bloc in the United Nations. This group has always been condemning India because they don't bother about India. But they don't say anything about China in Sinkiang. What all the Chinese are doing to the Muslims in Sikkim, they don't talk in Sinkiang, they don't talk anything about it. Because China is a military power, an economic power, and India is comparatively nothing. I mean, one of the backbenchers. So, if you look at this problem, I think it's a Gordian knot, and that is what has happened. India created the Kashmir problem, and India will have to solve the problem also itself. Another major point we must remember is that in 47, when the Maharaja of Kashmir signed the standstill agreement with India and Pakistan, hoping he would become an independent country, the Indians were just sitting on their haunches when the tribals from the northwest frontier and Baltistan invaded the valley. They had almost reached Srinagar, and the airfield was a touch and go affair, and that is the time the Maharaja signed the order of accession to India. I couldn't understand why Nehru and party were waiting for the Maharaja to sign the accession when the tribals were rampaging through, and in Baramulla they created havoc, raped the Kashmiri woman, set the town on fire, and perhaps if they had not indulged in these pleasures there, they would have captured the Maharaja also. But then again, there was a lack of aggressive policy, a lack of appreciation, and Nehru was at his wit's end because just a few months earlier, he had ticked off the Indian army chief, who was an Englishman, that he didn't want the army. He said, "We believe in ahimsa. We don't have any enemies. We don't want the army. I can manage with the police force." But he had to change that once Pakistan intervened in Kashmir. So the problem is twofold: lack of aggression, lack of planning, and making laws which kept Kashmir separate from India, and also the bigger crime of internationalizing Kashmir by taking it to the United Nations and then agreeing for a ceasefire when almost 40% of the territory, including Baltistan and Gilgit, had been taken over by Pakistan. Now the question arises, what happens next? Pakistan, let's accept, considers India as an enemy, and they would like to take revenge for what India did in Bangladesh. The only Indian who has added two and two and made it four was the chief of the Indian Army, General Roy Chaudhary, I think, who said that Pakistan wants revenge for what India did in Bangladesh. I'll not go into all that detail, but the fact is the Indian Special Forces were operating in Bangladesh along with the Mukti Bahini, and now India is crying foul when the Pakistani terrorists are operating in Kashmir. So, how do you solve the Kashmir problem? Now, we have people like Farooq Abdullah and Begum Mufti, and they are saying the only solution to the problem is you talk to Pakistan. Now, I'd like to ask these two worthies, what is India going to get by talking with them on Pakistan? What are we going to talk to them about? Nobody has an answer to that. They will say have a plebiscite, but there's so many conditions in the plebiscite, and that is old hat now. And everywhere, though the principle of self-determination has been accepted, I do not think that many Kashmiris would like to join Pakistan because the situation there, the economic situation, the political situation is terrible. It's a good bargaining point for Guru Abdullah and Umar Abdullah can keep talking like this, but in their heart of hearts, if they were honest, they would do away with the security which is provided to them by the Kashmir government and the Indian government. Would they have the courage to move around Kashmir without that security? No. Even if you remember or recollect now, the Sheikh Abdullah's mausoleum is guarded by the BSF and the CRPF because so many of these people in Kashmir have said we'll just uproot it. So, where are we going to go forward? How are we going to solve the Kashmir problem? It's, as I told you earlier, it's a Gordian knot. It's not going to be easy to solve it because the issue is internationalized. Nobody recognizes the division or the reorganization of Kashmir, which has been done by India, least of all Pakistan and China. China doesn't recognize a border with Ladakh. And it's a hornet's nest, frankly, and it's a creation by the Indian state. Now, what is the way forward? Talks with Pakistan is not going to help anything. Pakistan is hell bent. So the only thing is a war. Now, that is not easy. It's easy to talk. I can say have a war with Pakistan. It's not easy because Pakistan, though one-fifth size of India, matches India militarily. And we must remember in the three wars which India has fought with Pakistan, we didn't make much headway in those areas, whether it was 47, 48, 65, 71, and even in 98, when the ceasefire took place thanks to the Americans and Bill Clinton, the large number of area in the Kargil Hills was still under control of the Pakistan Light Infantry. But they were, of course, demoralized because of the heavy bombardment which was being carried out by the Indian Air Force and the Bofors guns. Another point which to be noted is that at that time Vajpayee also developed cold feet, and he was a BJP leader. And he insisted that nothing will be done to cross the line of control. It was not like what Shastri gave the carte blanche to General Chowdhury. It was not that way. So army suffered hundreds of casualties for nothing. Now, since that time, 24 years have passed, and Kashmir is still, still simmering. Terrorists are floating around in the valley, targeting the minority community, and the Indian government is just sitting on its haunches. We must remember that when the terrorist movement, the ethnic cleansing commenced in 89, the government in power was the Congress party led by Narasimha Rao and earlier by VP Singh, and they failed to stop the influx out of Kashmir of the Hindus who were being targeted. At that time, the army was not called in. Martial law should have been declared at that time to put a stop to this, but it was not done. In a way, the Indian government at that time acquiesced, agreed with the terrorists, let the Hindus go, and they went. And the valley, which had about 2 to 3 lakhs of Hindus, was reduced to zero, and the valley became 99% Muslim. And the result was that more and more people began to think of anti Indian thoughts as well as thinking and talking about joining Pakistan. Gentlemen, it's what we call the witch's cauldron, it's a hornet's nest. And now, having created the problem, as I said earlier, India will have to solve it. And the solution is something radical which has to be done. I would like to draw attention to what has happened in China in Sinkiang and what the Bangladesh government did into the Chakmas in the Chittagong Hill tracts. The Chakmas were Hindu tribesmen who had started an insurrection, and they were reduced to a minority when more and more Bengali farmers went and settled there. That I think the movement has died away. And by and large, even the movement by the Muslims, Uyghurs in Sinkiang is abated. Chinese have put almost 200,000 Muslims in education camps, and many Han Chinese have gone and settled in Sinkiang. So the whole situation has changed, and China has taken very strict steps. They banned Ramadan, they banned the burqa. And what about the OIC, the Organization of Islamic States? They're silent. They don't say a word, but they keep on making resolutions against India. So the thing is that India must build up its military power, number one. Number two, India will have to integrate Kashmir with the valley. There's no other way. And that is by opening the floodgates, I would say, the floodgates of migration from the subcontinent to the valley. Once you have a substantial number of people going there, anything is possible. And the third point is a hard line against the Kashmiri terrorists. I find there are some terrorist trials continuing for years together in Kashmir. Why can't we have something like the military system of justice? After all, even in Pakistan, all terrorists are tried by military courts and death sentences are handed out summarily. We have to be ruthless. Gentlemen, as I told you now, talking with Pakistan, irrelevant. Pakistan is hell bent on creating revenge for Bangladesh, will continue this problem in Kashmir. The only way we can solve it is we solve it ourselves, and the only way out is to follow what happened in similar circumstances in other countries in Sinkiang and the Chittagong Hill Tracts. That requires guts and courage, and I do not know whether Mr. Modi has that mettle in him. We'll have to wait and see, gentlemen. At the moment, I'm pretty pessimistic. Despite all talk of reorganization and doing away with Article 370 and all that blah blah, the situation on the ground in Kashmir hasn't changed. Terrorists are moving around, killing minorities, and the government is giving statements. That's what's happening. Well, gentlemen, you got the picture of Kashmir now. It's a creation by the Indian state, and the solution will have to be from inside India. I close now. Wish you all the best. Do subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, and goodbye and God bless. Jai Hind. Look after yourself.